I'm sure you've all lost hours and hours to scrolling through TikTok, right? I know I have. And perhaps some of it is a waste of time. But honestly, with over 1 billion users, it can't all be that bad, right? Well, in October 2021, a 61-year-old man kidnapped an American teenager and took her across state lines. And it would probably take a miracle for her to escape, right? Luckily, she liked to scroll through social media too. But how on earth could TikTok be any help in that terrifying situation? Well, try to stop scrolling for a minute and listen up, because you're about to find out. Leaving a bad home situation has always been really dangerous, but with the lockdowns hitting in 2020, it became so much harder. Like, if you can't even leave the house to make a phone call, what the heck do you do to get away? Or even safely call someone for help? I wouldn't have thought turning to TikTok would be an answer, but it can be so surprising to see what else is on those videos. No, not that. I mean, TikTok has some really great advice to use.
Remember, when selecting your username and password, you never want to give out any personal information.
My age, my favorite color.
And then there's other good advice, like surviving the kind of crimes that we cover on this channel all the time. In one case we covered, I remember really well, a teenager called Kara Robinson Chamberlain got captured by a serial killer. She had to be really resourceful and kept herself totally aware of her surroundings. And that's how she was able to make her lucky escape. In that video, we covered how she became a total TikTok star and even went viral when she talked about how she survived. And then she went even more viral with some really great advice about how to get away.
If it's zip ties, basically pulling it tight and like kind of pushing your arms apart really.
And I mean, there's always someone who might try and grab a person who looks vulnerable. This means you have to act really fast, make a lot of noise, and never let them take you to a second location. For example, look at this boy from Utah. Last year, a sketchy person in a van stalked him, offering him candy for 2 whole blocks, not far from where he lived. He ran really fast, but when he finally made it home, his front door was locked. So he tried to drive the creeps away.
Panic.
I picked up rocks and I was holding them like this and I was gonna throw them, but
luckily, the boy was able to get to a neighbor's house and call the cops on those freaks. Yeah, that is so scary. But in this case we're covering now, a teenager from North Carolina was taken by someone she and her family already knew. Her parents quickly declared her missing, but after 2 days, nobody had seen or heard any trace of her. It must have been awful for them, but nobody had any idea where she was, who she was with, or what was being done to her. You know, the worst cases we cover show just how often the victims and survivors already know or knew the person who hurts them. And here, the teenager and her kidnapper had known each other well, all thanks to being a part of a camping community which she went to often with her family. Because of her age and the situation, I don't think her name is being released yet. But I've learned that this North Carolina teenager had willingly gone with her kidnapper at first, because you know, he was a friend, no stranger danger there, right? But it quickly got really scary for her. He actually threatened to harm her pet dog if she tried to escape. I'm guessing that this happened at around the point where the teenager wanted to get the heck out of this guy's car. Look, nobody hurts a puppy on my watch. So she really didn't have a lot of choice but to do everything that he wanted. Also, this is a smart thing to do once they've got you. A lot like Kara Robinson did, she was probably playing along to see if she could, you know, lull him into a false security. And at least she wasn't locked in a plastic box or tied up somewhere else. She still had some options. All she had to do was wait, and then she could make her move. But he was probably a lot bigger than she was. So I bet by now you're totally wondering just how was TikTok involved in this case. Well, about a year ago, there was a viral TikTok from the Canadian Women's Foundation, and it was really useful. It showed the emergency hand signal to use when you're not able to speak out loud, or if you don't want to leave a digital trace of your message. So, like, if the abuser is within hearing range, the hand signal is a really great way to make a friend aware that you need their help. Have a look at this example. In this apparently very normal video, a lady is asking for her banana bread recipe, keeping playing it light, you know?
I know your mom is a great baker, so I should be good.
But then the whole meaning of this friendly chat changes with the signal. I think that the woman's friend reacts really well here. She doesn't give anything away about the true situation, but she obviously sees what's happening. So she can call the cops, or at least find a way to check on her to be sure. It's a really good idea. And if you feel like baking banana bread, also pay attention. But seriously, this is good advice. But it all depends on if anyone has any idea on what the signal means, and if they believe the person doing it. By this point, our North Carolina teenager had been missing for 2 whole days, so time was definitely running out. She'd have to be smart to survive this. On November 5th, 2021, the police picked up this very worrying 911 call.
This phone is Toyota Corolla from Madison County. This female on the passenger side, brunette, motioning for help, call 911.
Even if they weren't clear what the caller meant, of course, this all sounded really bad. So the Kentucky police set up a huge roadblock ahead of the kidnapper's Toyota. So they caught the kidnapper. He was a man called James Herbert Brick, and got him out of the car. The teenager ran to the police and then they searched him. The police found some very sketchy material on Brick's phone. He tried to hide it in his deleted files. Remember to empty that recycle bin, sketchy people. When the authorities uncovered all that gross stuff, Brick got really mad, which is always such a great idea when you're in front of the cops, especially when they've just rescued a teenager from you. Oh boy, that's a bad move. So with that scary detail in mind, I really hate to think what could have happened to her if he'd been able to keep driving her to their final destination. Luckily, James Brick just thought that she was waving at drivers, but she was doing the hand signal the whole time. This finally caught the attention of a driver who spotted that the teenager was also silently saying, "Help me." So she was totally terrified. By now, this guy had taken her to North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and finally Ohio, where he had relatives. But once the relatives realized what he'd done, her age, and the fact that she was declared missing, they just didn't want to know. But she must have had some idea that her future didn't look good. I hate to think what he was going to do next. By the time the cops saved her, they said, and of course the teenager was totally scared of what he might do. It's all super nasty, isn't it? Ugh, she might have been doing that signal for a long time, and it's lucky that anyone saw her before Brick realized her plan.
We don't know how long coming down the interstate from Ohio that she had been doing this to other motorists, hoping that they would notice that she was in distress.
It's a good thing that he thought she was just waving and that he probably didn't hang around in the women's rescue TikTok feeds. Maybe he was more of a thought kind of guy, you know? The police charged him with possession of that creepy photograph and for unlawfully imprisoning the teenager. But because this weird case crossed state lines, the FBI got very involved too. And of course, they're taking this case super seriously. Even better, the FBI added kidnapping charges to Brick's arrest. So the judge increased this creep's bail from $10,000 to $50,000. So no, he won't be doing this again for a long time. Good. The case is also already going to a grand jury. This means that a trial is definitely coming up. It's a pretty big deal, and we'll probably learn even more about what happened there in a year or two. But for now, at least more and more people know about this case and that useful hand signal. And the teenager might have even heard of it thanks to a much sadder story. Gabby Petito's infamous videos got analyzed heavily even before they found her remains. It's so sad, isn't it? But it's totally possible that poor Gabby was using that exact distress hand signal to show the world that she was in a whole lot of trouble. But in those videos, it's still pretty hard to tell for sure. And back then, it wasn't as well known. I mean, the police have only just realized what it is. But for now, I'm just really happy that this case had a happy ending. And all thanks to one simple hand gesture. Now, I'm going back to scroll through TikTok. Well, maybe I'll learn some serious self-defense instead. Can't hurt, right? So, what do you think about this case? Would you remember to use the hand signal? Let me know what you'd do in the comments below.